Hello, you beautiful angel. Teri, how are you today?
I am wonderful. How are you today?
Oh, I'm more so better at seeing you. You just brightened up my day because we had an amazing pre-podcast chat, and I'm still really energized from that chat because it was just so lovely to talk to you, the energy that you have around you and just what you have to offer for the world and your knowledge and expertise. I just think it's amazing. And I was really looking forward to this podcast show.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you very much. It's funny that and gracious that you share all that with me. It's like that's what's coming into my awareness lately is that it's probably a little bit more than I ever thought it was. So that's what I'm maybe starting to stretch into a bit.
Absolutely. And the thing is, you're just so spiritual and you've got so much knowledge around like spirituality as well as personal development. So I think it's a really good combination. And the fact, when I talk to you, I can tell you're very humble, about everything, and you're very sincere. And I just feel that, a lot of people can benefit from you. And even your teachings, I know that a lot of what it resonates with my Tony Robbins teachings, about finding a purpose and about your value systems. And and this is why I'm so looking forward to this podcast show, because I really want to learn about your journey and about how you've got to where you are today, the humble being that you are.
Right. I think the humbleness, I think that's probably like a wiring, like I showed up that way. And I also think too that for myself and then other folks that have come through some really challenging stories, and I think many people with stories that'll drop you to your knees, that comes alongside with that, humbleness to it, because it really kind of sets you apart a little bit, kind of changes everything for you. But it's interesting that you mentioned the Tony Robbins thing. A lot of people have asked me if what I do is similar to that. I don't really know his methodology. I would guess that it is because people ask that of me. But what I know is that we find our ways to the teachers that are able to pour into us. So you might be someone who feels real comfortable with Tony, or you might be someone who feels comfortable with me. So, or whoever it ends up being, that takes you on your journey. So, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. So tell us about yourself, where you're from and, where you are today and how you got to where you are today.
Well, logistically, I live outside of Chicago, so I'm in the States, and I've come through, gosh, so many conversations, so many challenges. And one of the ways I used to phrase it years ago was that if you imagine that that a child can be abused in many different forms and fashions, all of those things had occurred to me by the time that I was 9. Anything that could be done to another human being had happened to me. So that kind of set things in motion. And then the trajectory of things, like the pinnacle of things for me was at age 12, I was abandoned in a trailer, like a mobile home. And I was left there without an adult, without food, utilities off and on. I did not ever, I can't recall ever having hot water. So I wasn't clean. My body wasn't clean. My clothing wasn't clean. And sometimes there was there was electricity, and sometimes there wasn't. Sometimes it was darkness and quiet. So that had actually been a process that took about 3 years till I was actually removed from that situation. But it, it's interesting that, it's like everything is like an onion, we go through layers of things, and how some things came up for me during COVID that put me back into that place, that part of being isolated, and was kind of triggering for me from that time period of not having anyone around. But the, kind of survival was challenging because I was 12, and there were things I could not do. I couldn't go get a job. I couldn't drive a car. There were just resources that weren't available to me. I did, however, learn to sign a signature for one of my parents so that I could get free breakfast and free lunch at schools. So school days I got to eat, and days that we didn't have school, there was no food available for me there. So summer times in the States, we don't go to school at all. So for 3 months out of the year, there's no school session, and those were particularly challenging. Um, but I remember a time that I was very hungry, and I had some loose change, it's small change, and I walked to the grocery store, which was about a mile from my home, and there wasn't enough money to buy anything. So I stole a package of hot dogs, and I will never forget the feeling that I had when I walked out of that store, having stolen. Was horrible to me. And I just thought, I can never, never, never do this again. I just can't allow it. So I made the decision that that wasn't going to be the way that I could survive. And right around that time period, there were families in the trailer park that saw me, and they thought, well, she'd be a good babysitter. So I was babysitting for a couple of different families in the park, and there was an evening where the mom didn't come home to pay me, and usually it was her. She came home and she gave me my money, and I would go back home. But it was the dad of these children that came home, and he said to me that he had the money for the babysitting, and he had a little something extra if I wanted it. And I didn't just want it, I needed it. That was a difference of if I was going to eat for the next week, or if I could get the utility turned back on. And I knew what he was talking about, that those things had long since been taught to me as a child. So we went into one of the bedrooms of the trailer, and I dropped to my knees, and I left with that money. And what he did then was he told other men in that trailer park. So ultimately, that's what I ended up doing. Was I would go from trailer to trailer to trailer and do what I needed to do, and get my money and go home and take care of what I needed to. So that was indescribably challenging. I mean, there's just no way there aren't probably words to describe what it felt like to be that was my reality. That was what I knew. That was all I knew. And I couldn't see anything forward from that. There was no other picture in my head of anything different than this being my life. And I remember particularly a really bad storm that we had. And if you've ever been inside of this trailer, our trailer, it's like being in a tin can. Things are really loud. So there was this horrible, horrible storm. And I remember thinking that I was afraid. And that was not a feeling that I ever really allowed. But all of a sudden there I was thinking that I could die that night and no one would know. And thinking, how long would it take until somebody opened the door and realized that I had died? How many days would that take? And then I had to let go of the fear. You can't have no space for that. I had to keep moving, and I got mad, and I thought about God and what I knew God to be at that age, and I got angry, and I thought the God that I was taught, God was certainly not the being that would ever allow a girl to go through what I was going through, all that I'd been through, and then to go through what I was going through. And so I just decided there couldn't be a God. It just didn't make any more sense to me. And I would have probably been sold a bill of goods. And I got angry, and I couldn't say the word God until my late 40s. That's how mad I was. That word couldn't pass my lips. And it was real strange because it was right after I pulled that plug and I said, there is no God, that I heard a voice. And it was like there was somebody in that trailer with me, but there was nobody there, and the voice was outside of my head, so this voice, which now I know was God, said, just get through this. You know, everything that's happened to you has needed to happen. And you're here to touch hundreds of thousands of lives. And I took that message and I tucked it away. You know, I didn't tell anybody about it till I was in my 40s. What it did for me, which is interesting, is that it didn't give any permission to anything, you know, but it did give a sense of purpose. So when I came out of that situation at age 15, I was pretty messy, you know, between my ears was a pretty hard place. But I knew I had something to do, like I had a job, you know, I had to get it together. So I've just been on this route my entire life of finding the healing, you know, finding the path and the purpose. And for many, many years, I dreamt about being a professional speaker, but I kept going, well, what are you supposed to say? You know, and I kept coming across like, well, you've got this story, and I've got many stories that I take to stages now, but what's the point? You know, I couldn't quite understand what the point was. And what's fascinating to me is how we evolve, you know. So here I am in my mid 50s, and now that messaging is finally coming together for me of, you know, we all have these tragedies, but then if you're supposed to take that tragedy and you're supposed to be impacting lives, how do you translate that from here's this tragedy to here's the outcome, here's the point? So I feel pretty grateful that I found my way to that, but boy, it's taken some work, you know, to become this.
I was going to say, because obviously you were a little child when that horrendous incident occurred. I mean, how long did it go on for?
I was there for like 3 years. So from age 12 to age 15 is when I was rescued out of that situation, I guess is the only way to say it. But I remember not long afterward, you know, when I realized I needed some professional help. I thought of taking my life. You know, I was at that place, you know. It's a miracle to me that I didn't become addicted or that I wasn't trafficking my body, because those two things probably should have happened by just law of average of those kind of situations. But I remember being in school, and that the guidance counselor in the school had sent a note to come to his office, you know, and so I went into this man's office, and he said to me, he asked me what I was doing there. And I thought, what am I doing here? You asked me to come into your office. You're the one telling me here. And he said, he asked me, he said, you know, why do you go to school? Well, the answer was, I went to school so that I could eat. You know, that was the reality for me.
Wow.
And he said, he and I didn't tell him that, you know, we were taught, you know, we don't talk about it, you know, it's secrets, lots of secrets. And so he said, you know, because do you know that you're failing all the classes in your 9th grade except for orchestra? And I thought, no, I didn't know that. I didn't know. But it made sense. I mean, I loved orchestra. The fact that I wasn't failing that class made all the sense in the world, right?
Yeah.
But he said, you know, I kind of gotta tell you, he said, I'm really confused, Teri, because you're failing everything, but you're pretty smart. And he said, I want to show you some stuff. And he pulled these paperwork out of my file, and he said, he explained to me that they'd done some testing early in the beginning of the year, you know, the beginning of the school year. And he explained what percentiles was. And he said, you know, out of 100 kids, he says, you're like the 95th smartest kid in the room in math. And he goes, and you're like the 98th smartest kid in English. And he said, because I don't get it. He goes, why are we sitting here talking about the fact that you're failing your 9th grade? We should be talking about where you're going to go to college. And I was like, wow, college?
Yeah.
I never thought about college. I'm like, I never thought about graduating high school.
Wow.
No, my world was, how do I survive till tomorrow? That was my world. So thankfully, this guy gave me copies of those papers, because if he hadn't given me physical, tangible proof, I would have walked out of that office and I would have talked myself out of that whole conversation. I would have rewritten it in my head. I know it. But I had these papers, this proof, that I wasn't, that I wasn't, that I was actually kind of smart. And so what hit me as I was walking back to class was, I didn't know that I believed this about myself, but up until the moment that I sat in that classroom, or in that office with that man, I actually believed that I was, we called it back then, being mentally retarded.
Really?
Yeah, which is, I know, not politically correct, but 40 years ago, that's what we named it. And I'm not, that's not my wiring, but what a tragedy, that to think that was what I believed about myself, and I didn't know I believed it. But once I saw it, like, that was where it all opened up, right? It was like, oh my goodness gracious, I'm not. And now that I know that I'm not, because I got the proof, right, that he gave me the papers, is my whole world opened up. Everything in my world changed. That was a pivotal moment. It was a transformational moment for me. So I'm grateful that man took that time to pull me in and give me that gift.
Believed in you, right?
Yeah, yeah. Enough that it raised an eyebrow. That here he had a kid that was fairly smart and wasn't making it through. But yeah, so that kind of changed things for me. But I think that for the most part, people that come through really challenging situations and circumstances, you can have different places that you go with that. You can use those circumstances to say, this is why I can't do, or I can't become, or be, or evolve. Almost like a crutch, like if your leg was broken and you had to walk with a crutch. Or you can say, I'm going to change this because of, or in spite of, what I came from. There's wonderful stories. I'm not the only one of people that have done that. But I think that another niche of it too, which I love people that do this, is when you take life's hardships and you say, and not only who can I be because of it, but how can I contribute to the life of someone else because of this. And so one of the things that I know, like I have some pretty interesting gifts, and one of them is that I'm able to connect with just about anybody, anywhere, and in a very non-judgmental way. Like I have a way of seeing people where I see them from the inside out. Like I see people's core, I see people's soul, and then I see maybe the messiness about them, in the physical way. So very quickly, I'm able to tap in and into people and see where they're supposed to go, who they're supposed to be, and what's standing in the way. I get that vision as well. So, and I think a lot of that has to do with, because I came through what I came through, and then did the work I did for myself so that I could go be of service, is really what it's about. But it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And I love sharing it. I do it. All day, I just do it everywhere. I just bump into people everywhere. And I love going places where life is really hard for people, and bringing myself and my story, or whatever it is I'm supposed to bring to those situations.
Yeah, it's just amazing. And I think you've hit the nail on the head, that it really does only take that one person to believe in you, to notice you. And that's all you need, to have that self-belief to move on and to not live in your sufferings, and to become the victor and the warrior that you're meant to become. So what happened after that then? Because there was a big phase, between that and obviously when you discovered God. So what were you doing?
Well, I think, it's interesting, because I came from a place of not enough money, not enough material abundance, that I up until recently had this underlying terror of not enough money. And so I found ways really quickly to start making lots and lots of money. And that was a way of kind of not elevate myself, but to kind of quiet down that monster inside my head of like, what I never wanted to be subjected to what I was subjected to back then. I never want to have to go back to that. And I certainly didn't want my children living in that way. So I was a workhorse for a long, long time. But as I was a workhorse, like, it's interesting, like everything I've owned a lot of businesses, and everything that I fell into was because I saw injustices in a certain occupation. And then I would get so angry that I would open a business to try to right the wrongs. So that was kind of part of it. But when I first started to find my way to some healing, some emotional and psychological healing, I remember being in my 20s, and I would just kind of daydream about speaking professionally. Like I just thought, wow, I just really need to do that. And I thought, well, you know what, maybe I need to go speak to abused children. Maybe that's my audience, and so I would think about it. And then in my 30s, it was abused children, abused women. And so it just like the audience kept shifting. But finally it was in my 40s, I was in the midst of a really, really challenging marriage that was deteriorating to a second husband. And I was just absolutely in crisis. And it was triggering everything, every fear, everything that I had worked so hard to avoid was right in my face. And I think what I know is that it cracked me open. But I think what happens is that, if we're not listening, we're not listening to ourselves or the universe or God or whoever you pray to, you're not listening. It's like, first you get a tap on the shoulder and they go, excuse me, Teri, excuse me, Teri. And then you don't listen. Then they're like thunking you on the head. Hey, girl, listen, Teri. And if you're really not listening, then life will take you and shake you, by the shoulders. And so I was getting shaken by the shoulders in this situation. And I was leveled. I mean, everything was taken away from me, and I was down just to the nothingness of, I couldn't imagine it. And I was at a place of raw and base survival again, except now I was 42. So, no, I'm sorry, 47. Yeah. Cause I was like coming out of that marriage, not going in, but I found myself at a Unity church, which is a little bit more, maybe a little bit more new age than some other religions. But I crawled into the back of this Unity church, and I would sit in the back pew through the service, and I would just cry, silently cry. And after a couple of months, I was able to talk to the minister and that sort of thing. And that's where it started opening up. Wow. And I also got introduced to meditation. So it was like everything came together to say, this is what you need now. This is the level of healing you need now to go do what you're supposed to do. And so once all that came together and I made peace spiritually and reconnected, then everything started opening. And I thought, well, now it's time for me to go speak. I need to go get in front of audiences. So that was the next step. And that was the huge, huge step for me to go start to do that.
Wow, absolutely. Yeah, you had a voice, finally. You had a voice. Yeah. But surely that would have been quite difficult. I mean, coming from, the background, that you haven't, any trauma survivor has, right? It's confidence. It's we're so judgmental, and it's like, oh my God, because I'm just thinking about myself and how much I struggled. And it's only recently, really, since I've been doing my podcasting, that I feel finally, I have a voice, and my confidence has been raised, my self-esteem, my self-worth, everything, and it's just by talking, being that conversation starter. So what was it about you, do you feel, within yourself that changed?
Well, and one of the things that came to mind when you were just sharing that is that it really also cycles into contribution to others. Because if it were just your voice, you'd be singing in the shower, right? It wouldn't be like, here you are, like touching people. You're like contributing to the betterment in the lives of other people. So I think that's part of it. I think for me, like kind of what really amplified it and took it to where it is for me now is when I first started to speak, I was going into those places where people were at their darkest times, so there is a city in the United States, and it's one of my neighboring communities. It's called Gary, Indiana. And it is one of the toughest crime-ridden areas in the United States. I think it's in the top 3 right now. But I would go into Gary, and I would go into the homeless shelters and the battered women's shelters, and that's where I was speaking. And there was an organization there that was providing parenting classes to people that were court mandated by the city of Gary to go through classes because their kids were having some troubles, curfew violations, or they weren't going to school, truancy, things like that. But these parents would have to come to 9 classes and never be late and not miss a class in order to get the 10th class, where I would show up, and it would be like their graduation gift, and I would present it on a topic, and it would just be this great big celebration. And you got to know, this is a really hard place that I would go into. I would park my car outside of the building, and there had to be an armed guard that would come and take me to and from my car. It was dangerous there. Yeah. And I would walk in, and these people would be looking at me like, who is this woman? I mean, they wanted nothing to do with me. But the thing is, once I start to speak, people understand I'm not what I appear to be. I'm actually very easy to relate to. So in short order, I would start talking, and it would end up being this great thing. So the last time that I was there, this woman had stayed, and everybody had left, and she stayed later, and she came to me, and she said, do you remember me? And I said, gosh, you know what? I don't remember you. Where did I meet you? And she said, well, I was here about 4 months ago, and I heard you talk. And I'm thinking, oh, she got snagged again, and she had to go through this class again. And she said, I finished the class, and I went to the judge with my certificate. And he said, I asked the judge if I could take the class again, because I want to hear this woman named Miss Teri speak. And he said, okay, and so he signed her up for another class. And I'd found out after we spoke that she had no transportation, which was real common out here in this community. So she was walking back and forth almost 2 miles each way to every class, the 9 in a row, to get to this 10th class and get to hear me and talk to me again. And she said, I don't remember what you talked about. She said, all I knew was a couple days after I heard you talk, I realized that all that I was ever doing was screaming at my kids. And she said, I stopped hollering. She said, can I show you my kids? And I'm like, yeah. So she pulls out her phone, and she shows me this little girl, and maybe 7, 8 years old. She said, this is my girl. And she said, I was always screaming because she had her books and her markers and her crayons and her colors. It was always a mess. And she said, Teri, when I stopped yelling at her, she said, do you know my girl's an artist? And she says, I want to show you my boy. And she shows me this boy, and 14, 15-year-old boy. And she says, she said, he's actually kind of smart in math. And Mommy and I were talking that we think he's going to be the first one that graduates high school in the family. Amazing. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I thanked her. And I got back to my car, and I just cried. And it was like, it hit me, I thought, oh my goodness, this woman heard something 4 months ago that changed her life. And then that changed the life of her kids, right? Forever. Her kids have a different mother now. And then when they couple up, that's going to be completely different now. When they have kids, if they have kids, that's going to be so different, right? Because this woman heard something 4 months ago in a talk I gave. And I just saw the whole thing. It was laid out for me. And it was just obvious to me. And I just thought, Teri, you have got to start doing this professionally. You have got to get out there. You've got to let more people know your story, what you've come through, anything, all of it, and what it is you have to share. So that moment in time is what made it go from, I do this just out of the goodness of my heart, to I need to be making a living at it, and I need to be focused at it. So that was the shift completely for me to take it as take it on the road and make it professional. So, and it's been interesting. So that was, that was a few years back. And so now I'm at a place where I'm more comfortable telling my story. And now I understand part of the reason for it. I think there are many, many gifts to surviving what I survived. Like, I don't think it's a one-dimensional thing. So something that somebody else will share, something that a gal gave me recently. She said the thing that she took away from knowing me and hearing my story was, she said, you have a gift to share about learning to love in spite of. And I thought, boy, is that profound. How do you love yourself or others in spite of what in spite of what we've all survived? It's not just about me, yeah. So it's interesting. I've got a bad storm. Can you hear that behind me?
I was gonna say, yeah. So I guess it's that season.
Yeah, it is. It must be that season. It's like we're gonna storm in the middle of our podcast. But yeah, I think though, recently it's like probably, I'm gonna say probably in the last few months is when I've really defined a program that I developed from coaching people. It's called 8.5 Minutes, where we can put this practice into place for 8.5 minutes a day, and you can actually start transforming your life completely. It's just an amazing thing that I designed. So that's what I've been taking to stages. But what's come to me is that this realization of understanding our value, because I think we all struggle with that. I don't think that there's any amount of ease of life or discomfort in life that changes that. I think we all struggle. But what I've learned is that, there's nothing and no one that can define your value, including yourself, which is pretty profound. We think that we have the ability to do that, and we're looking in the wrong direction is the reality of it. We're looking outside of ourselves. We're looking at the outside of ourselves versus what's inside of us that actually designs that. So
that is so true, yeah. And self-love, oh my God, this is something that I've been practicing very recently, and I never knew what love was, I'm sure I had a love block or something, and it's just recently I'm like, wow, love really does start from within. And I was jumping from one relationship to another, all bad relationships, because I wanted them to fill a void in me, a big void, which I had, and I just knew that it was just only recently I had this voila moment when I was like, I'm fine on my own, because I love myself now. I feel like so much abundance and fulfillment around me and within me. It's that auric field, isn't it? We have to protect our auric field. And now I just feel, wow, I actually do feel ready to try and find somebody who's going to lift me, no more trying to put me down, no more of that.
Or the ones that we're trying to boost. That was always my problem.
Yeah.
Clean that up a little bit. I can infuse a little bit of money into that. He'll be just fine. Yeah, that was me. I was that girl. That's all he needs. He just needs a little help, and then he'll be on that wonderful thing he's supposed to be. Yeah, that was mine.
Where did that get you?
Well, it cost a lot. But you know what? It gave me a lot of. Okay, so here, I'll tell you this one. I'll tell you the story. If we've got a moment, I'll share it with you. But this story of this second marriage that I had been married to the father of my children, and then divorced him. And so for 13 years, I was alone raising my kids, 2 children. And I worked very, very hard because, I couldn't go back to that reality of not enough money.
Yeah.
And so I had quite a bit of assets accumulated. I had a lot of money in the bank, a lot of money in retirement. I had my kids' college funds completely ready to go. I had a couple of different homes, a vacant property that I was going to build a great big house on, everything external, right? And thinking that would bring me peace, that it would make sure that my children wouldn't go hungry. So when this man showed up for me, he was everything that I'd prayed for, you know, like I made this list of what I wanted, tucked it away in my drawer, and he was it, right? He showed up at my doorstep. And we were together just about 5 years. And right at the time of the 5th year, I had nothing left. All of it was gone. I was losing my home. All my money was gone, including my children's college funds. He was a con man, you know, he knew what he was doing, and he systematically got me to a place where I was signing checks and withdrawing everything I'd worked for myself and my kids. And we were at a place of where it was about a week, I had a week left in the home that I lived in, and then the sheriff was coming to take my home. You want to talk about terror for a little girl that was raised in this trailer, you know, that was like everything. Oh my God, losing everything I'd worked for was crazy. So he turned to me and he said, you know, he said, I just want you to know, he said, he never really loved you. And he said, I'm gone, I'm leaving. And he had already found his next mark, you know, his next woman. So he had moved on to that and he left. And I was just leveled, you know, just blindsided and leveled. And I'd been so manipulated that my thinking was skewed. But I remember he was gone, and in just in real short order, I was so grateful for him. And my daughter was just, now she's a little older, she's like, she didn't understand any of that. And I said, you know, I said, here's the thing. I said, that man was one of my greatest teachers, and I know this. And it took this for me to learn something. And so I asked myself, what is it that you need to learn? And what I looked at was, I said, you know, I needed to talk to the girl that met that man 5 years ago and ask her, you know, why is it that you chose that man to sleep with and marry, and then liquidate everything you'd worked your life for? You know, who is that girl? You know, and I realized that girl didn't love who she was. She couldn't. So I started that moment to say, I don't know where to draw from or where my resources are going to come from, but I need to learn to love who I am. And that started that path. But what's interesting to me is that, you know, and this is part of how I'm put together, is that if I met him on the street, he wouldn't recognize me. Like, I physically looked different, not intentionally, but as I started healing inside, my body started changing. My eyes got lighter, my body shed excess weight, all kinds of really great things happened. But he wouldn't recognize me, but I would certainly walk up and I would thank him, because he gave me the opportunity to find exactly what I needed to find, to become who I'm supposed to become. And I say, like, if I would have known that this girl was inside that girl, I would have hoped to bypass him and just go straight to here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because this is like a really cool place to be. And, you know, when you're talking about too, about, you know, when you learn to love yourself, and I think that's a journey, you know, and it was for me, at least, it was like steps that I took. But I've arrived at a place, and I think you're here too, of like, there's just a sense of peace around it. Does it mean I don't want to date again? No, I certainly would love to date again. I'd love to have somebody to dance with and somebody to take the trash out. I love it.
I know, right? Universe, listen. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, he'll come.
It is, yeah. And I had a similar situation. Again, you know, I never knew about narcissism or, you know, sociopathic, you know, all these personality disorders, right?
Right.
All that manipulation, you know, the control that they have on us. And it's like, you know, it's like they're born with this narcissism gene, right?
Yeah, they're broken.
Yeah, and like yourself, you know, I got financially burnt, and then I took him to court and I won. And I just remember sitting there in that court chair because I was winning, and he was trying to appeal against me and appeal against the judge. And I just remember he was sat there. I went to the bathroom and I come back, and I just went and sat next to him and I just stared at him, and he just he couldn't handle me and my energy and my strength, and he just ran on the other side of the
Oh
hall.
my
I
God.
absolutely, yeah. I was like, wow, this for me, this is victory, you know.
No kidding.
And that's when my true strength and inner love and peace and everything, that's when that
Yes.
started to develop.
Yes.
I was like, oh
Yes.
my God, you know, thank you. And yeah, you're right. And I thanked him.
Thank you.
So
Yeah.
much. Because also, like, I was so, it was just like, like you, I was very ambitious and just earning loads of money and spending it on silly things, you know, like property, vacations.
Right.
And it's like, and then I realized, wow, money is just energy, right? Why do people get so hooked on it? It's, you know, and was that a lesson that you learned as well regarding money?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it?
It's well, then there's no accidents, I think, in the fact that you and I both found our way to narcissistic sociopaths, because I know mine was, and I guess yours was too, but just from the fact that you had to land in court with him tells us leaps and bounds, or you know, so much about him. But I think that, you know, one of the things I'd read too is that when you're an empath, you're like the perfect puzzle piece to a narcissist. I'm like, right?
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
it's like we have a sign on our foreheads go, wait. Pick me, I'm your girl. So yeah, so it's, and now that we have that awareness, now it's like, now I can vet them out pretty quickly and I steer clear of them. But it took a little practicing to get to that, where I didn't get hooked up into them, even just for conversation or whatever for a little bit. But yeah, I think those folks are a little, I just think their wiring is wrong. So there are things that don't plug in right. So
yeah, and they, you know, obviously, you know, they can never fail, they can never make a mistake, and it's just so ego driven, it's so annoying, and there is no reasoning with them whatsoever.
No, and I think that what, for me, and I don't know if this was similar for you, but the amount of venom, you know, when we did start to stand on our own, and we did extricate our, you know, get ourselves away from them. I think it's extricate is the right word, but the amount of anger from that, you know, just wasn't reasonable. But again, I look at you and I think, okay, I know I've got a little bit more years on myself than you, but like how grateful I am that like here we are, we're both lovely people, you know, and we have the opportunity to create a brand new life. It's not like we're 87 or 97 years old and that's kind of it. You know, we get one more run for it. You know, you get a couple more runs, I get one more run for it.
So true, we're free, we can do whatever we want, and you know, it's all about living each day to its maximum, and you know, living a life of fulfillment. And that's why I think it's amazing, you know, we've been given this gift to help others who may have been in these, you know, toxic relationships, and you know, to give them this courage that there is a way out, and you can go and find yourself.
Well, and there's hope, you know, it's like there's hope. And there's also, I think what happens too, you know, is when you hear someone's story, like you're sharing your story with me and it represents me. It's like, there's possibility, you know, your story opens up possibility for me. And I know mine is probably doing the same for you. So it's like, that's kind of the cool place of it. I think that what I'm been most aware of lately has been gratitude, you know, of like, it's not intentional. So like there was a time I tried to keep a gratitude journal and every night I'd be like, oh, I got to write in that gratitude journal again. You know, like I didn't want to do it. It was like a chore. Your gratitude journal shouldn't be a chore. How to say, but as a natural, like the more peaceful I've gotten, you know, the more that I'm accepting of who I am, the more peaceful I've gotten, the more gratitude comes naturally. And I know, I believe for sure that's a catalyst of more good to come. But I am so blessed. You know, just the basic walks of life that I take and the gifts that are given to me, you know, and I know I touch people, I know I do. But what comes back to me, you know, COVID aside, you know, we were in lockdown, every weekend, every Friday and Saturday night, I go out and I dance. And I go out alone. And And I've done that for so long now that people have seen me. So people come up to me and they'll tell me, oh my gosh, my husband and I saw you at this festival. Oh my goodness, and they'll tell me where they saw me. Like, it made that kind of an impression. And I remember I'll tell you 2 stories about going out and dancing alone. One was, this was a daytime festival, and it was really hot. It was like 100 degrees. Everybody was dripping, and I was the only one on the dance floor because I was just drenched. And it was like nice 70s music, like disco, what's going on. And I was in the middle of a song, and some woman comes up to me, and she was a little bit older than me, maybe 5-10 years, whatever. And she starts dancing with me, which happens to me all the time. Women will come up and dance with me. And the next thing I know, we're both grinning from ear to ear, and she starts to do the bump with me, and she's moving, and I back up, I let her do her thing, and we're just having a blast. And so after the song ends, I turned to her and I said, oh my God, come dance with me again. I want to dance with you again. And she doesn't say anything. And all of a sudden her face dropped to nothing. And her son came up and he took her by the arm and he said, Mom, it's time to go.
Really?
And he walked her off the dance floor, and her daughter came up, and her daughter had been recording us with her phone, and her daughter was sobbing. And she said, my mom has Alzheimer's, and we brought her in from the home today to hear music. She said, we haven't seen my mother dance in over 20 years.
Wow.
And I'm so grateful that you gave that to my mom. And I said, oh no, please thank your mother for me, because she gave me a gift today, of like, I got to dance with her, I got to remember what that does for us, all that stuff. So anyway, that was one story. And then another story is, I was someplace I was dancing, and some young boy was dancing with me. He came up and he was dancing, and he danced with me like the whole night. He was so sweet. He was like 12, 13 years old kid. And a few days later, one of my clients reached out to me, and she said that he was actually profoundly disabled, and not in a physical way, but intellectually and cognitively. And I didn't know, because when you're dancing with music, you're not conversing, you're just enjoying music together. And she said his mother had videoed it and showed her, because my client was his therapist, and said, he won't stop talking. Let me show you this video of him dancing. And my client said, oh my gosh, I know that woman. Right. So that boy talked about that for days, and what that gave to him. And there's just something about my field of energy that people feel very comfortable to come up and talk to me or dance with me or anything like that. And a 12-year-old boy, could you imagine? They're already feeling awkward. And then he was dealing with his own disabilities to come up and want to dance with me all night.
Right.
Yeah, and I saw his mother after at another event with that same band, and she asked me if I remembered her son. I said, of course I did. I said, where is he? And she said, I couldn't get him to come out tonight. I said, well, you tell him the next time this band plays, he's to find me, and he is my dancing man for the night. So I look forward to seeing them again. But it's so the whole thing circling back is just a presencing to profound gratitude. Those things go both directions, of course, but it's like, and this is not an ego statement, but I am so grateful that I've had the people along my path, and that I've had the desire and the message from so long ago of what I'm here to do, because it's allowed me to do the work I've had to do to become the person who is here to be that vessel and that vehicle, to be that for other people, however that shows up. If I'm dancing with someone, or I'm keynoting in front of 1,000 women, or I'm coaching a client, or whatever it is I'm doing, that's taken work and effort, but I'm grateful that I've done that work and effort. That's been my latest, is just this awareness of, I'm just grateful.
I can see that. Yeah, just so sincere, and I've seen you've got really emotional a few times as well. So thank you so much for sharing such intimate and personal stories with us. I really appreciate that. And you getting it out to the world.
You've set the platform for that. You set the platform and opened the door.
Yeah.
Some of these stories I've shared on other podcasts, not all of them.
Okay.
And not in the way that we've been able to enjoy them. Yeah. But I'm grateful to you as well, because look at this opportunity for me, to be, to exchange with you and touch people across the ponds. I mean, you're not in my backyard. There's a little bit of distance, but
yeah. No, I would be there in a second.
Oh, and likewise, I would love to come your direction. I would love it. Love it.
Anytime. Come when you're going to do some speaking or.
Yes. And just as a shameless plug, if something crosses your radar about an opportunity to speak somewhere over there, or someone that's listening to this, absolutely track me down. I would be honored to come across and to share these stories.
Obviously, just speaking with you and the way that you are, I could sit here for hours just talking with you.
You probably so. Warm up some coffee and we'll enjoy the afternoon together. Yeah, isn't it? I know. It's very comfortable. I think it's mutually comfortable.
Yeah.
And I do think too, I mean, I know that I've done a lot of talking in your podcast, and thank you for that permission and latitude to do that on your show. But I think that I'd love to guest with you again. I think that there are many conversations we could have and places that we could go. And this is giving hopefully some people some things to think about, and some opportunities to open things for themselves, is my first wish, of course. But then this is kind of a foundation, and then from here it's just kind of like knowing all of that. Then you start to decide, well, what doors do we want to open next? What do we want to explore? Because we haven't even really gotten into some really fun topics that are out there.
I know some of the topics that I've seen on your email and obviously on your website. But what would you say are the key messages that you would like my listeners to take away?
That I think the biggest one has to do with your value and your worth. Is, I think that unfortunately we are taught to evaluate ourselves opposite than what we need to. We look at what I call outer wins. We look for more education and more income. We look for better looking bodies or younger looking bodies, and those are great things. I'm not discounting any of that, but it's never enough, when we pursue those things. And I think that when you look at like you've achieved some fantastic things in your life, and you're like, and then a couple of days later you're like, yeah, whatever,
what next?
Yeah, well, right. It's like there's still a vacancy. Yeah. There's something missing still. It's because it's backward. So so kind of what my focus is this commitment to encouraging and teaching and guiding people on how to find their worth from the inside out.
Okay.
If you can imagine, like, what would it feel like if you knew how extraordinary you were, and it was unshakable, and nothing outside could change it? Imagine holding that for more than a second or two. Your life there would be no words to describe your life if you could hold that. So that's the thing I've learned. That's the thing I share and teach now. So that would be my biggest takeaway, is to just start opening up to that possibility, because again, it can come from a Tony Robbins or a Teri Healy or somebody else. We don't know. I don't know who somebody is the teacher for, but yeah, that would be my hope, that we could all start to recognize that, because I think we all deserve it. And I think too, like, the more that you and I and everyone else gets a little bit stronger and a little bit more at peace, we're all interconnected. You know, we may never bump into each other at the grocery store, but our lives and our energy are connected.
Yeah.
And now you and I are connected forever.
Yeah. It's these connections that really help to build a support network around us, you know, that we can really build on, and it just helps to have that. And you know, you mentioned about the COVID and being in isolation. I feel that that probably has traumatized quite a lot of people still. You know, and probably will be seeing a lot of PTSD as a consequence of that.
Absolutely.
So, yeah,
we're not through it. You know, I think certain areas of the world are still even in more of a lockdown state than we are here in the United States, but we're not done. We're not on the other side of it, or even like seeing the impact, let alone finding our ways to recovery of it. I think that'll be years to come. So
what can people start doing as of today if they're, you know, sexual abuse survivors, trauma survivors, if they're currently in a toxic relationship? What's that one thing?
I think that, you know, one thing that I know, and in a philosophy that I believe in, one of my guiding philosophies is, it's actually a Zen philosophy, and it says everything that happens to me is the best possible thing that can happen to me. That's heavy, you know, because there are horrible things that happen to people, but within absolutely everything is some sort of nugget of gold. So in all things, in the midst of processing and working through what's challenging, if you can say there is some gold here and I'm going to go hunt for that, I'm going to go dig for that, and you go find that, that would be my wish for everyone. You know, is that if it's COVID, or if you're still arm in arm with a narcissist, and you've got to get yourself through that situation, or whatever is occurring to you, ask for the gold. So the man that drained me of everything, and he turned my children against me, he was just a monster.
Oh goodness.
The gift of gold was, I started to learn how to love myself because of that.
Wow.
Thank you kindly. I mean, yeah. So if you look at it, yeah, you have to, and the atrocities that I came through as a child. I mean, it just so many things happened. Yes, it doesn't discount any of that. All of that's horrible life circumstance. But the gift is, I can be with you. I can have a conversation with you. Yeah. We can talk about it. Maybe we're touching other people right now. We don't even know who we're touching right now.
Exactly.
Right? We don't, you know, we don't know where this is going to go. It's going to be out there in the ethers forever. Then if that's the gold, see, that created this. Isn't that a great thing?
So basically every negative experience that we endure, every bad person that comes into our life, it's all a lesson. There's
not always a lesson. I'm cautious about that one.
Okay.
Because so I'm not a fan of the expression, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I don't believe in that.
Okay.
But I don't believe it's always a lesson. There's always a nugget of gold. There's always a gift.
I like that.
So like in COVID, you know, when everything was deteriorating, here I had these speaking engagements, and I should have been international in 2020, and I didn't. It went away. Couldn't travel, you know, then all of a sudden that engagement went away. And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I mean, speaking was my livelihood. How am I going to make money? I took a class and I started writing. I've been published 6 times now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I've been like in major magazines across the globe, and I didn't know I could write, you know. It was like, that's the gold. See, no lesson there for me, except, I don't know, maybe there's a lesson there, but the gold was, I'm a writer.
Wow, you found this. I know you found your creative side, and again, creativity comes from self-love. Yeah,
absolutely. It's all connected. Yeah, it's all connected.
So yeah, tell us about your books, and you know, if readers want to find your books, where can they find them?
Right now, you can find, the articles that I've had published in different magazines.
Okay.
Some of them are industry specific to real estate, because I do have some conversations in that world, but some of them are more life oriented. I think you can find them if you Google me. I think if you Google my name, you'll find it. But
Yeah.
keep an eye open, because I'm in the midst of writing what they call a teachable memoir, which is some of my stories, then some that I've shared here, and then others that I have not yet, but stories. And then also I'll be detailing the program for 8.5 minutes, teaching people in this book how to work that. How do you change your life in 8.5 minutes a day? And I know it can be done. I've proved it. So yeah. So that's the one I'm working on. That should be out. It should be spring of 2022 when that'll be published.
Okay. Oh, fantastic. Watch this space.
Yeah, I like that.
And what would you say is your biggest aha moment in your life?
I think the biggest aha moment was the story that I had shared when I didn't know that I believed something about myself, that was driving my life. So part of the best coaching work that I do with people, one-on-one, this is not something you can normally do in a group setting, is digging out those messages and those beliefs that we carry about ourselves, because we all do it. We just don't realize it. And all of a sudden, when you dig it out, you're in the position of power now, and you get to decide what you're going to do about it. So you may have messages like I had, that I was mentally retarded, that message, it didn't really serve me. It wasn't keeping me safe. It wasn't changing my life for the better. It was just an inaccurate belief that I had bought into. So I was able to discard it. But some of the beliefs that we have that we don't know we believe actually have some good to them. They serve us in some way. So a lot of times what we do when we dig out beliefs, and this is, what we, meaning a client and I, will do is we'll actually rewrite it. So we'll get to be able to choose the part of the belief that is of service for someone, but then rewrite the part that needs to go. Let's have that part go and replace it with some good stuff. So I encourage everyone to start excavating, start really looking at what's underneath that, and then asking again, what's underneath that? But what's underneath that? And just really kind of start digging that out.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. And what is your favorite quote and why?
It would be everything that happens to me is the best possible thing that can happen to me. It's that unquote. That comes from, if somebody's interested in getting it, there's a little paperback book called Zen and the Art of Happiness. And it's tiny. You'll read it in a couple of hours and be done with it, but it kind of expands on that whole philosophy. That's a life changer. That's a life changer.
Wow. Okay, thank you. And how can my listeners find you?
You can find me either in my website, it's terihealy.com, or you can also find me if you're on Instagram. It's called Digging for Your Gold is my Instagram handle. I'm also on Clubhouse, and as my name, Teri Healy. And then I've also just joined another audio social media platform called Fireside. So you can start to see me there. And I think as more of these audio social media platforms open up, you'll see me on more of them.
Yeah.
I kind of like that stuff.
Yeah, I can see. Oh, fantastic. And what I will do is also in the profile, I'll add some links as well where people can connect with you. Yeah, because it's just been an absolute honor to have you on, and just the amount of value that you've added already to my life, and I'm sure to many others who will be listening. It's just, you just can't even put a price to that. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm receiving all that. Thank you.
Good. You should. And I just think you just had such an amazing journey from tragedy to triumph, right? And look at you today. You're out there sharing your wisdom for others to survive, and to just realize that they can really make a go of it, and they don't have to suffer in silence anymore.
Absolutely.
It's about believing in yourself, having that belief, and just finding not just your one purpose, but like Teri says, you can have many life purposes. Just trying to really tune into that.
Absolutely. And they don't have to be grand. I like to tell people that too. You don't have to take stages and speak to thousands of people. You don't have to write books. You don't have to do any of that. But I do believe that we're here for contribution.
Yeah.
So maybe you're supposed to be the best sister or the best mama or spouse. I don't know, but those are not discounted things. It's just how you show up and how you serve.
And on that note, we will have to call it a day. Thank you so much again. And I look forward to speaking with you again. So
I'd love to, anytime.
Fantastic. I will be in touch. Thank you so much again. And I wish you a lovely afternoon. And I hope the weather clears up for you. Probably not.
It sounds like it's quieting down, thankfully.
Take care. Thank you. Bye.